Hey y'all, so I decided I'd make this video to show you what I did to disable my auto start stop system on my 2020 Crosstrek Premium. I kind of found it to be an annoyance. I hated coming up to stoplights and never wondering whether or not my car was going to just suddenly die on me or not. And then sometimes I was having a lurching problem where the car would suddenly start even though I hadn't released the brake yet. It would lurch forward a little bit if I didn't have enough brake pressure. Kind of found that to be a little bit of a safety issue, plus the annoyance. So I decided to see if I could find some hack to get this thing to stop. All the other hacks that I found online didn't seem to work, and I'll go through that in this video. I also came across a really good video by John Cadogan, auto expert, who basically describes the system and why it came into being and why the manufacturers made it to basically game fuel economy standards, and why it's kind of a lot of bullshit and not really a very good feature for us as the consumer. So anyway, in this video, I'm going to go through testing of the available hacks, why they didn't seem to work for me on my 2020, what I found that did work, and then how I installed it. Okay, so the first step that need to start off with is removing the switch panel on the side here and getting access to the back of the switches. So as you can probably see, I rearranged my switches a little bit and took the switch blank out. I had moved the auto start switch over here to the left so I could see it a little bit better. So what I found was, if I get behind this entire switch panel, you can see that the entire panel just pops out. And then now you have access to be able to get to all of the switches, which is why I said that I moved this one over here. But this way I can get to the individual auto start stop switch and have an easier time pulling it out with these tabs right here than trying to come into it from the top, which again is why I kind of messed up my switch there in the beginning when I first tried to do that. You can see here I can just remove it just with my fingers. I don't even need a screwdriver now. So if you want to get to the insides of this switch, it's just simply these two little cover tabs right here. That I will need my little screwdriver to pop those open for. Okay, now that I've got the switch cover popped off, you can see the insides of the switch here, which this is the actual button right here that pushes in and out, that controls the switch. So this big button up in the front here simply just pushes in and out and hits this little button right here. So there were basically three hacks that I remember coming across when I was attempting to find a way to disable the start-stop function. The first one was involving soldering a jumper across these two terminals here, which would thereby effectively short out this switch on a constant condition. The other involved physically keeping the actual switch closed the entire time. You could duct tape it, which would keep the switch completely pressed the whole time. Or some people suggested throwing in a toothpick jammed in between the switch and its housing here, which would essentially do the same function. So all three of those, the toothpick, physically taping the switch closed, or actually soldering across these terminals, or even putting a wire across these terminals, all do the same effect, which is closing this switch and holding it and keeping it closed. Unfortunately, it seems that the logic circuitry that Subaru has in this 2020 model doesn't appear that it'll allow that to work. So what I've ended up having to do is find out that what it actually needs is not just a closing of the switch, but it actually also needs a releasing of the switch too. So it actually needs both functions. It needs what's called a pulse function. It needs an up and it needs a down in order for the computer to know that you have selected this to off. So I'll demonstrate that. Here I have my two probes hooked up to the yellow and black wires. If you can see that there in the switch, the yellow and the black wires. And if I look what's coming out of those two currently, it's showing 12 volts. And what happens when I push the front of the switch, as long as the switch is pushed in, you can see that the voltage drops to 0. When I release it, it goes back up to 12 volts. Once I push the switch, it also changes and turns on and off the auto start stop on the dashboard. However, if I just hold the switch in, nothing changes. It's once you release the switch that the logic state changes over. Thus why the jumper trick is not going to work, because all it's going to do is stay shorted. It's not actually going to release. So you actually have to release the switch in order for it to switch over. So here on the dashboard you can see that currently right now the auto start stop's disabled. That's probably because I have the door open. So here's the two ends of my test clips, which are hooked up to those two wires below. If I short them, you can see that I can change on and off the logic state of the auto start. However, if I just hold them, nothing changes. It actually has to be released for the actual change to take place. So what I needed to find in order to replicate basically what would happen when a finger would push the auto start stop switch is I needed to find something that would replicate the same thing, and what I found was on Amazon I found a programmable timer. It was $13 plus a little wire, a fuse tap, and a small box to put it in. Was basically all I spent on this project. I'll post a link below to the timer I found on Amazon, and then I'll show you how to program it. So let's see if I can get this thing programmed. So the instructions that they send with the unit are a little bit difficult to figure out, and of course they're written in English translated from Chinese. So it's a little bit difficult to figure out what exactly they're talking about, but the nice thing is that there is a PDF online that discusses in a little bit more detail and a little bit more clarity how to make this all work. So what I chose was function number 3, because basically what you want to do is have an initial delay followed by your pulse signal and then have it switch off. So as you can see from the chart here for number 3, it also repeats, but it only repeats if you have a trigger coming in, and since I'm not using a trigger to come in, what that essentially means is that I should just get a pulse that gets triggered when power is applied after a short delay and then switches off, which would be the exact same replication of what your finger would be doing on the switch. So what I have set up here is power coming in from an external source, just a transformer, so I can program it here in my living room. Figured that would be easier than in the car. Your output is on this end, and I have hooked up to it a multimeter right now to see whether or not my programming is correct. So we'd hook it up to the normally open side with common. You've got 4 numerical LEDs for help in programming. You've got 4 switches, and then 4 LED indicator lights which tell you what modes that you're switching in between during programming. So essentially you go into set mode, and then the MD, which is this first LED indicator over here,
tells you which mode you're going to want. And since I'd selected mode 3, I'm going to then hit the numerical switches till I have 3, and then I will hit set again. That will light up T1, which then will indicate my time interval for the initial delay. And I selected 12 seconds. I figured that was enough time for the engine to get started and to finish its after start checks before I input the signal. So then I'll hit 12 seconds on the numbers here. And then for T2, that's the total time that I would essentially be pushing the button. So I figured a second is probably long enough. So I'll enter a second for that. The last NX down here is not used in this case. So then I will long press set again to get out of this and put it back into operating mode, and hopefully I'll have it programmed. Okay, so here we go, applying power. All right, looks like the unit's powered up. All right, let's do a long pause or long press on set. All right, so we have MD lit up and 1 flashing. I'm going to hit the plus button till I'm in 3. Then I'll hit set again. All right, so for T1, it's showing 5 seconds. I want to have 12. So I'll hit the plus, or actually the minus button, till I have 2. Now I'm going to have to get that other LED blinking. So for that, I have to hit the switch. There we go. Hit number to 1. So now I have a 12-second initial delay. So I'll hit set again. All right, right now it's indicating 5 for T2, and I want just a 1. All right, and we're now flashing 1. This does have the ability to do 1/100ths of a second as well. And the instructions tell you how to set that up if you want, but I figured 1 second is probably as short as I need. All right, so if I hit set again, it'll just tell me what's programmed into NX, which just means the base numbers for both T1 and T2 increase by 1 second for each interval. So anyway, like I said, that's not important. All right, I'm going to hit set for long press. All right, it looks like it's running right now, counting down 12 seconds. And if I'm correct, my meter, there it goes. I just had the relay click. It went over for a second and then clicked off. And now it appears like it's just kind of in a sit and wait mode, which is exactly what I want it to do. I don't want it to click any more, any further for the entire time I'm driving the car. Now you can also turn off this display so that this display is not running all the time, but since I'm going to put this in a box, I don't really care. So let's try it again. I'm going to unplug the power. All right, power has died. Let's plug it back in as if the car just received power and I'm starting it. All right, we can see that it's counting down its 12 seconds. Shortly you'll hear the relay click. You'll see the indication that it's closed. There it is. 1 second, it's off, and now we're back into wait mode.
Okay, so now I have the wiring all done. I had to tap into an unused fuse outlet. You can see over here where I've got a fuse tap, and I'm using an unused socket, and that socket happened to be switched with the switch. So that way, when I turn on the switch, my little circuit board will have power and begin its countdown. Don't judge my little box here, that's just for now, so that I can kind of house it until the little plastic project box comes in the next few days. So then here on the wiring bundle for the actual switch, you can see I've tapped in. To hook this up, I tapped into the yellow signal wire and soldered
a wire in for the timer. However, you could use a vampire tap on this line as well. I also tapped into the black ground, but you could also obtain ground from another source.
So let's go ahead and start it, and we'll see what happens. Alright, car started. You can see my timer's timing down, counting down here. Right now there's just showing that that's not available. Okay, the timer just counted down, the relay clicked, and you can see that the auto start stop disabled is now disabled. The switch also still works, by the way, so if you still want to hit the switch, you can still use the switch to turn on and off auto start stop. Alright, so here we have everything all buttoned up. Everything's all nicely hidden back in there. Ready to give this a start. So let's give it a try. Engine starts up. Timer should be counting down right about now. And in a few seconds, I heard the relay. There it is. Auto start stop is disabled. Okay, so here we are a month later. Seems to be still working. Haven't really had any issues. Still seems to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. Start up, and the timer counts down, and in about 12 seconds here, I'll hear the relay click. There it is, and there's my auto start stop disabled. So far seems to be working fine, and I guess if I have any problems, I'll update this video. In the meantime, good luck. Hopefully this was helpful to some of you.